I stood by the kitchen island, holding the ivory envelope in my hand, like it was something sacred. The gold embossed lettering spelled out what I had waited for all year: Columbia University's graduate commencement ceremony. It was a bright spring morning. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows of my parents' Connecticut home, bouncing off marble countertops and perfectly polished glass cabinets. Everything was quiet except for the occasional clink of my father's spoon against his coffee cup and the steady tap, tap, tap of his fingers on his phone. I cleared my throat gently, hoping for a moment of eye contact. "Dad," I said, lifting the envelope slightly. "My graduation is next Saturday. It's at 10 a.m. in the main hall. I was asked to speak just a short speech on behalf of the graduates. I thought maybe you and Mom—" He didn't look up. "Take the bus," he said flatly. "Connor's Tesla appointment is that morning. We can't miss it. They're custom fitting the sound system. It's a whole thing." I blinked. I actually blinked like maybe I hadn't heard him right. "It's my graduation," I said again, softer this time. "From Columbia. With honors. I just finished my master's in clinical art therapy. I was one of only 3 in the program chosen to give a speech. Still no eye contact. Mom passed by arranging a fruit tray, her eyes darting away from mine. "Oh, honey, we're very proud of you. But you know how important this is for Connor. He's meeting with the hospital board next week. His new car has to make a good impression." That word again. Impression. That's what everything in our house came down to: appearances timing optics. And Connor was the king of first impressions. At 36, he was the golden boy neurosurgeon, Harvard grad, six-figure watch collection. When he walked into a room, people noticed. I, on the other hand, was the daughter who doodled. That's what they used to call my paintings. Your little doodles. I'd been teaching children with trauma through art since I was 24. But to them, I might as well have been finger painting at daycare. Dad finally looked up for a second, just long enough to say, "You don't need a ride to that. It's not like anyone important is coming for you anyway." Anyone important. As if my work with refugee children, cancer survivors, and PTSD patients didn't count. As if the thousands of clients who use my platform for therapy and hope were somehow less real than a shiny car or a hospital board meeting. I stood there frozen for a moment. Just me, my envelope, and the invisible line they'd drawn around me years ago. I put the invitation down gently on the counter. "Right," I said, turning toward the door. "Well, enjoy the Tesla showroom." No one stopped me. I drove back to my apartment in Manhattan, silent the whole ride. Not angry, not crying, just hollow. Back home, I opened my laptop and looked at the dashboard for Soul Canvas, the company I'd built from scratch. Our user engagement was up by 30% in the last month alone. The mental health pilot we'd launched in Japan had been picked up by 3 national hospitals. Our AI had just passed FDA evaluation for clinical therapy support. All of it invisible to my family. All of it dismissed as Rachel's little art project. It had taken me years to get here. Years of rejection, ridicule, self-doubt. They hadn't seen the sleepless nights, the client calls across time zones, the partners I had to fight to earn. They hadn't seen the trauma I carried from being constantly measured against my brother's success, like I was some consolation prize. They saw what they wanted: to see a daughter who chose crayons over scalpels, feelings over facts, mess over structure. And maybe that was true once, but not anymore. I closed the laptop and stared out the window. The city was bustling below, millions of people all rushing toward something. Somewhere down there, people were preparing for next Saturday's ceremony, choosing their outfits, inviting family, maybe writing speeches about gratitude and growth. And I was going to be standing there alone. Unless... A small smile crept onto my face. I turned back to my computer and opened a different tab. It was time to finish the preparations. Time to turn all this silence, all this dismissal into something they couldn't ignore. They wanted impressions. They were about to get one. I wasn't always invisible. There was a time, a long time ago, when my father used to pick me up from school with a juice box and a peanut butter sandwich, and he'd ask about the drawings I kept tucked into my backpack. I remember once in 2nd grade I made a watercolor of our backyard garden, and he taped it to his office wall. It stayed there for almost 2 weeks before being replaced by one of Connor's science fair certificates. From there, everything slowly shifted. Connor was the prodigy. Always straight A's chess club champion, junior science Olympiad finalist. Me, I had passion, imagination, and a wild, swirling mind that didn't fit inside traditional boxes. I drew constantly, sketchbooks in my backpack, charcoal in my pencil case, paint under my nails. My teachers called it a gift. My parents called it a phase. It's cute now, Dad used to say. But one day you'll have to get serious. In high school, I got accepted into a summer program at the Rhode Island School of Design. I was over the moon. It was competitive, expensive, and my first real taste of artistic recognition. I ran home breathless, waving the acceptance letter. Dad didn't even look at it. And how's that going to help you get into pre-med? That was the moment I started hiding things. By college, I gave in and enrolled at Boston University as a biology major. I lasted 3 semesters. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I was drawing in margins during lectures, missing labs to attend gallery shows, sneaking out late at night to paint murals on warehouse walls. When I finally dropped out, it was the first time I ever saw my father truly disappointed in me. "You just threw away your future," he said. "For what finger painting?" They didn't speak to me for 6 months. During that time, I lived in a studio apartment above a pizza shop in Brooklyn, scraping together rent with freelance design gigs and substitute teaching art classes. It was hard, humiliating at times, but I'd never felt more alive. The kids I taught were different. Some were angry, withdrawn, others couldn't sit still. But give them a paintbrush and a little space, and they transformed. One girl, Ava, 8 years old, no eye contact for weeks, burst into tears the first time she painted a picture of her family. She handed it to me without saying a word. That painting changed the trajectory of my life. I went back to school this time for psychology, then specialized in art therapy. I studied trauma neuroscience, expressive therapy techniques. I attended workshops, shadowed professionals, built up case studies. Still, whenever I visited home, the questions were always the same. "So, do you have a real job yet? How are you making money with this drawing thing? Maybe it's time to think about settling down. You're not getting any younger." Even as my work grew, my reputation in the therapy world expanded, and I began speaking at conferences. None of it mattered to them. Not really. If it wasn't a white coat, it wasn't success. I remember once at Thanksgiving, I tried to tell them about a breakthrough case I'd had with a nonverbal child who finally spoke during a color therapy session. My mom cut me off mid-sentence to ask Connor if his hospital was planning to publish his latest research paper. I stopped trying after that. But quietly, I kept building. I created a small online platform for trauma patients to express themselves through digital art. I didn't have much funding, just a basic framework and a handful of therapists who believed in what we were doing. The first 6 months were rough. We had 42 users and nearly shut down twice. Then a video of one of our art exercises went viral. A teenager in South Korea used our app to create a digital mural in memory of his late brother. The post was shared across Asia. The platform blew up overnight. Suddenly, we had international partners' investment offers and more users than we could manage. I hired a development team, then a marketing team, then clinical consultants from 3 continents. We secured a partnership with the National Mental Health Council in Canada, then one in Germany, then Japan. We rebranded to Soul Canvas. I moved out of my 1-bedroom apartment and into a 2-floor loft near Central Park, hired a personal assistant, expanded the company to over 20 full-time employees, and 100 contracted art therapists around the world. By the time I started my master's at Columbia, Soul Canvas was being used in 14 countries and had helped over 500,000 users. And still, I told no one at home, not because I was ashamed, but because I knew they wouldn't listen. They would smile, nod, and then ask me if I'd considered teaching kindergarten art as a backup. So I let them believe I was still scrambling, still taking the subway to part-time teaching gigs, still drifting. The irony, of course, is that I did take the bus plenty of times, not because I had to, but because I liked it. I liked watching people sketching quick portraits, hearing snippets of lives as I rode across the city. Those rides gave me inspiration, stories, humanity, and all the while I was building something massive, something healing, something entirely mine. I didn't need them to see it. but part of me still wanted them to. Maybe that's why when Columbia reached out and asked if I'd be the keynote speaker for our graduating class, I said yes. And maybe that's why I told the dean very specifically to keep the details of my business private until the end of the ceremony. I didn't want recognition. I wanted revelation. I wanted them to finally see me. The official invitation had arrived a week before. Cream-colored cardstock, embossed lettering, Columbia's seal and silver foil. My name listed among the keynote speakers. I placed it carefully into a small wooden frame and set it on the hallway table in my apartment, just next to a photo of me holding a brush, beside one of my early therapy groups. It meant something to me. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was the culmination of years of quiet work research, sleepless nights, breakthrough moments that no one had ever celebrated but me. So when I drove up to my parents' house the weekend before the ceremony, I brought a copy for them, tucked neatly into an envelope addressed in my own handwriting. They were in the living room. Dad was on his laptop, one foot resting on the edge of the coffee table. Mom was folding laundry, half watching a cooking show. Connor strolled in a moment later, humming to himself, checking something on his smartwatch. I smiled, a little too hopeful. I brought the final graduation invitation, I said, offering it like a peace offering. The ceremony's this Saturday, 10 a.m. at the main hall. They're doing a formal luncheon afterward. There's a place for each of you. Dad didn't look up. Connor raised his brows. Oh, that's this weekend. Thought it was later. Mom spoke up first. Oh, sweetheart, we might not be able to make it on time. I blinked. Why not? Dad finally glanced over. Connor's Tesla appointment. The showroom only had availability that morning. It's a custom build, so we can't reschedule. You're picking up a car, I said carefully. During my graduation. It's more than that, Mom added quickly. They're installing that new silent cabin tech, and the manager Connor needs to impress will be there. It's a whole networking thing. I sat down slowly on the edge of the couch. Can you come after the appointment? Connor was already shaking his head. Depends how long it takes. Plus, we're doing brunch afterward with Dr. Martinez and his wife. It's kind of important. Of course it was. Connor was joining the surgical board of a new hospital. Every meeting, every handshake, every purchase, even a car was calculated. Strategic, valuable. Me. I painted for a living. Dad looked over his glasses at me. You'll be fine. The bus route goes straight to campus. Columbia's in the city. No big deal. Mom tried to smile. We'll try to make the second half if traffic allows. No big deal. My graduation, my speech, my recognition after years of work of building something from nothing. I looked at Connor, who was now admiring the digital Tesla preview on his phone. Model S Plaid, he said proudly. It does 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. I stood up. The invitation crinkled slightly in my hand. Right, I said softly. Enjoy the car. I turned to leave. No one followed. As I reached the front door, I heard my father's voice again. It's not like anyone important is coming for her anyway. I stopped for a second, just a breath. Then I walked out. Driving back, I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. I felt strangely calm, like a curtain had finally been pulled back and the view was perfectly clear. I knew now that it wasn't just about misunderstanding me. It was about never trying to. They had never asked what I really did. Never once wondered how I supported myself in Manhattan, or how I paid for graduate school without loans, or why I sometimes missed holidays without explanation. They just assumed because I let them. But that was about to change. This wasn't just a graduation. It was going to be a reckoning. I wasn't interested in revenge. I didn't want to humiliate them. I just wanted them to see the full picture of me, of everything they had refused to believe in. And I had the perfect stage for it. The ceremony would be public, the recognition official, the impact impossible to ignore. Let them go buy Connor his Tesla. I had something far more powerful waiting. That night, I didn't sleep much. I sat in my apartment curled on the window seat with a cup of mint tea looking out over the city. Manhattan shimmered below restless, alive, beautiful. Somewhere out there, people were getting ready for the weekend for brunch, for their next meeting or date or yoga class. And me, I was preparing to unmask a truth I had carried alone for far too long. I walked over to my desk, turned on my computer, and logged into the back-end dashboard of Soul Canvas. Our platform, now in its fourth year, had over 2.3 million registered users. We had completed licensing partnerships with 6 global health networks. Our AI-assisted trauma response modules were currently being piloted in refugee camps in Jordan War Veteran Centers in the UK and pediatric oncology units across North America. We had just closed our Series C funding round 2 weeks ago, $700 million in capital. Company valuation $9.4 billion. I was the founder and CEO. And no one in my family had any idea. To them, I was still the one who never finished pre-med, the one who painted feelings instead of fixing spines, the one who took the bus. I opened the company Slack channel. A message was already waiting. Dahlia Exec Coordinator Rachel, the Columbia team, confirmed the script for your segment. They're honoring your request to keep your identity private until the final announcement. The press embargo lifts at noon on Saturday. Also, Time Magazine's editor-in-chief wants to confirm your availability for the Innovators Under 40 cover shoot in June. I typed back a quick reply. Let's do it, all of it. Then I clicked open my personal inbox. There were congratulations from our European partners, a video message from a mother in Buenos Aires, whose autistic son had spoken his first sentence during one of our virtual therapy sessions, and a short voice memo from Dr. Fathi, one of our earliest advisors. You changed the definition of therapy, Rachel. You've made healing accessible, beautiful, and deeply human. Never forget that. I didn't. I never had. I knew what Soul Canvas meant. Not just to me, but to every therapist, every survivor, every child who needed something gentle in a world that had been anything but. This wasn't a side project, it wasn't a fluke, it was a revolution. And now finally I was ready for the world to know. The next morning, I met with our in-house PR team to finalize the media strategy. We had coordinated the announcement with Columbia's administration, and I had asked for one very specific condition silence until my name was read. No early leaks, no pre-show press, just one stunning reveal. It's going to make a bigger impact that way, I told them. Let the story unfold in real time. My assistant nodded, scrolling through her notes. Got it. We're holding back the press release until the dean finishes your introduction. The Wall Street Journal and Forbes will publish simultaneously. Time will follow 2 hours later, and the studio car will be ready to pick you up at 8 a.m. Studio car. She smiled. The Bugatti, right. The limited edition white Bugatti they'd loaned me for the photo shoot. It wasn't really my style, I preferred my quiet silver Audi, but I understood the symbolism. Sometimes you have to speak in the language people recognize before you teach them a new one. Later that evening, I opened a locked drawer in my living room and pulled out the only physical memento I kept from my company's early days, a wrinkled paper napkin from the cafe, where I had first sketched out the Soul Canvas logo. Just a spiral of color, with a heart hidden inside. That napkin, and the idea it carried, had grown into something that lived in 17 countries, translated into 11 languages, and was now being used in over 3,000 clinics worldwide. And yet, to my parents, I was still doing something with art. They didn't ask. They didn't see. They never even wondered how I paid for Columbia, how I lived in an apartment that overlooked the park, how I flew to conferences in Davos and Singapore. They never asked because they never thought there was anything to ask. I wasn't angry anymore, just resolved. This graduation wasn't just a ceremony. It was the moment I stopped hiding. The final piece came together on Thursday, 2 days before the event. I got a call from Dean Carlisle at Columbia. We're honored to recognize you, Rachel. Your work is groundbreaking, and frankly, your humility has made it all the more meaningful. Thank you, I said. This isn't just for me. It's for every person who's ever been dismissed for dreaming differently. He paused. You're sure you don't want your name listed in the program beforehand? I smiled. I'm sure. Let them hear it when it matters most. That night as I got into bed, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from Mom. Mom, hi sweetheart, just confirming what time does the bus drop off near Columbia? We'll try to swing by after Connor's car thing if we can, but it might run late. So proud of you anyway. I stared at the message for a long time. The words looked fine on the surface, warm, supportive, but underneath it was the same pattern. I was an afterthought. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my calendar and confirmed one final appointment, the private family dinner I had scheduled for that evening after the ceremony. My penthouse. Catered. Just the four of us. They would come, I knew that much. Because after Saturday, they would no longer be able to pretend I was small. And I wanted them to see everything, not to gloat, but because I'd stopped trying to be seen, now I would show them. Saturday arrived clear and bright, the kind of morning that made the city feel like it was holding its breath. Sunlight glittering off the buildings, quiet buzz in the air full of something about to happen. I woke up early well before the alarm. The city outside my window was already awake. Joggers moved through the park trails below. Cafes were opening, the smell of espresso floating up from the street. Taxis honked in the distance. I sat for a moment at the edge of my bed, breathing it in. This was my city, my life, built without approval, built without applause. I checked my phone. A dozen messages already. Time. Your feature is queued. We'll publish at noon pending the announcement. Soul Canvas Board Chair. Proud of you. All of us are watching. You're doing something that matters. Dr. Fathi show them what healing really looks like. And one more from my assistant, Jade Bugatti's in the garage. Hair and makeup on site in 10. Dean Carlisle has the intro script printed and approved. All green lights. I stood up, walked over to my closet, and unzipped the garment bag. Inside was a suit I had commissioned months earlier, a deep navy blue with soft gold lining. Custom stitched, tailored perfectly, and quiet in its elegance. I had never worn it before. I hadn't wanted to until today. I slipped it on beneath my graduation robe. In the mirror, I looked calm, not showy, not flashy, just sure. At exactly 8:15, I took the elevator down to the private garage. The Bugatti gleamed under the fluorescent lights, all white curves and polished chrome. A gift from a tech sponsor who wanted to be seen supporting wellness innovation. Not my usual ride, but this wasn't a usual day. The driver opened the door for me. Columbia University. Yes, I said, stepping in. Main hall. Let's go change everything. As we drove north, I passed the familiar city landmark Central Park Museum Mile, the quiet brownstones of the Upper West Side. My phone buzzed with one more message. Mom, hey, sweetie, we're running a bit behind. Tesla pickup took longer than expected, and Connor wanted to stop for brunch with his director. We'll try to swing by toward the end of the ceremony. I didn't respond. Instead, I looked out the window at the line of graduates already gathering on campus. Families were arriving with flowers, cameras, proud smiles. Fathers in suits, mothers dabbing their eyes. Everywhere I turned, I saw love. I walked through the main quad alone. No one noticed me. I was just another gown in the sea of thousands. And I liked it that way. It gave me time to breathe, time to look up at the tall old buildings where I had studied thought healed built, time to remember that this day wasn't just about being seen. It was about standing fully in who I had become. Dean Carlisle greeted me at the side entrance of the hall. You ready? He asked. I nodded. Very. He held out a folded copy of the speech he would deliver before calling my name. Everything's in order. And just to confirm, you still want us to hold back your title until the final reveal? I smiled. Yes, let them hear it from you, the moment it matters most. He chuckled. You've got a flair for drama, Rachel. Only when it's educational, I said. Backstage, I took a seat beside the other speakers. Most were nervous. Some fidgeted with their notes. Others whispered to family members through the curtains. I was calm. I didn't need notes. I had lived every word I was about to say. At exactly 10 a.m., the music began. The lights dimmed. The graduates filed in. I took my place near the front row robe covering the suit beneath it, hands resting quietly on my lap. The dean stepped forward to the podium. Somewhere out in the crowd, I saw my family arrive late but there. They were standing along the side wall, just slipping into their seats. Connor looked polished. My father was distracted. My mother fanned herself with the program. None of them saw me. Not yet. But they would, and this time they wouldn't forget. The ceremony began like most do. An orchestra playing, softly murmurs fading as the dean welcomed families and graduates to the hall. Light filtered through the stained glass windows above the stage. Columns towered around us, a reminder of history, legacy, tradition. Dean Carlisle moved through the opening remarks, the importance of education resilience during uncertain times, the diversity of this graduating class. I heard very little of it. I was watching my family from where I sat. They were maybe 30 feet away, unaware that I was just a few rows in front of them. Connor scrolled on his phone, probably checking stock alerts or his step count. Mom leaned toward him with a whisper, probably about the Tesla's interior. Dad was squinting at the program looking for his son's name in the honors section. He wouldn't find it. Connor hadn't graduated from Columbia. But he was always the star. Until now. As the traditional conferral of degrees began, names were read, cheers erupted, cameras flashed. Dozens of students crossed the stage, received their diplomas, and returned to applause from proud families. Then a pause. Dean Carlisle stepped back to the microphone, his voice slightly louder this time, more deliberate. Before we continue, he said, we have a special recognition. The room hushed. This year, Columbia University's Department of Clinical Psychology and Expressive Therapies is honored to present a commendation for extraordinary innovation and global impact in the field of mental health care. People shifted in their seats. My family sat up slightly. Mom lowered her program. Connor stopped scrolling. The dean continued. In a world where mental health challenges are increasingly complex and access to therapy remains unequal, one of our graduates has not only reimagined the therapeutic process, but built a global solution. There was a buzz of interest in the crowd. She has developed a platform that combines technology, art, and psychology into a seamless ecosystem that now serves over 2 million users across 17 countries. Her work has been adopted in clinical settings from Toronto to Tokyo, recognized by the World Health Organization, and most recently funded by multiple international health boards. I felt my heart thudding, not nerves, not fear, just the weight of truth finally standing upright. She has spoken at Davos Advised UNICEF and earlier this year became one of Time magazine's innovators under 40. Her company Soul Canvas was valued last month at $9.4 billion. Gasps rippled across the room. Connor sat up. Dad leaned forward. Mom froze her mouth slightly open. And so the dean said, smiling, now it is our distinct honor to recognize this year's most outstanding graduate. Please welcome to the stage Rachel Monroe, founder and CEO of Soul Canvas. Silence. Then thunderous applause. My name echoed across the room like it had never been said before. I rose slowly, pulling back the edges of my graduation robe. Beneath it, the tailored navy suit shimmered softly under the lights. As I walked toward the stage, I could see my family's eyes tracking every step. My mother had dropped her program. My father's jaw was set tight, unreadable. Connor looked like someone had just unplugged his world. The applause continued as I climbed the stairs. Photographers leaned in. Somewhere, I heard someone whisper, "That's her." I stood at the podium, cleared my throat, and looked out over the sea of faces. Some shocked, some smiling, many simply waiting. I looked directly at my family. Then I began. 4 years ago, I left a career path that everyone expected me to follow. A few murmurs in the crowd. I didn't do it to rebel. I did it because I saw something no one else around me could see, a different way to help people. A different way to heal. The hall was still. I spent years hearing that what I was doing wasn't real, that art was a hobby, that therapy through color, music, motion was just play. I was told kindly, and not so kindly, to be realistic, to get serious, to stay small. I paused. While others bought their dream cars, I was designing dream tools, ways to reach those no one else could reach. Survivors of war, children with terminal illness, adults who could no longer speak but still needed to be heard. I could see a woman in the third row wiping tears from her eyes. Our platform isn't just about painting or drawing, It's about dignity. It's about giving someone the means to tell their story when language fails. It's about creating space when silence has become unbearable. More murmurs, heads nodding. I took a breath, letting the weight of the moment land. And yes, I added, smiling slightly, I did it while taking the bus. Soft laughter rolled through the room. I looked straight at my father now, not because I had to, but because I didn't need to show anyone what I drove. I needed to show them what I could build. The screen behind me lit up with images, children painting in hospital rooms, veterans using our platform in rehab centers, testimonials from patients in multiple languages. A graphic displayed our reach, our partners, our global map. Then finally, our impact: over 2.3 million users, 3,000 clinics, $9.4 billion valuation. I closed my speech simply. To anyone who's ever been overlooked, unheard, or underestimated, keep going. You don't need permission to matter. You just need purpose. Let the world catch up. Thunderous applause. The dean shook my hand, smiling with real pride. You did it, he said quietly. I nodded. We did. All of us who were told no. As I stepped down from the stage, the lights shifted. A camera crew moved in for a formal photo. Columbia staff guided me to the edge of the auditorium where journalists were already waiting. I barely noticed them. All I could see was my family still seated, still stunned. Dad stood now, slowly clapping, though his eyes were wide with disbelief. Mom had tears streaming down her cheeks. Her lips moved as if trying to form a sentence. Connor looked like he'd swallowed sand. I walked past them without a word, out into the sun. The Bugatti gleamed in the roundabout. My driver opened the door. As I stepped in, my phone buzzed again. Time magazine feature is live. You're on the front page. I glanced back once just as my family stepped outside. They didn't approach right away. They just looked at me, at the car, at the gathering press, at the security team coordinating the Forbes shoot outside. And finally I saw it. Recognition. Not just of success, but of identity. They weren't seeing a daughter anymore. They were seeing a woman they didn't understand. And maybe finally they wanted to. I stood just beyond the press line near the valet stand, the Bugatti idling behind me like something out of a dream. The sun was warm on my face, the applause still echoing faintly behind the thick stone walls of the university hall. Then slowly, I saw them coming. My parents and Connor emerged from the crowd, blinking in the light like they'd just stepped out of a theater into another world. They looked smaller somehow, unsure, untethered. Mom was the first to speak. Rachel. Her voice cracked on my name like she hadn't said it in years. I turned toward them, hands loosely folded in front of me. Hi. She stepped forward, eyes glossy makeup streaked. We had no idea, she whispered. How did we not know? I tilted my head slightly. I guess no one ever asked. Dad cleared his throat, his usual posture now collapsed inward. All those times you came home, you never said anything about any of this. You mean the company, the clinics, the millions of people we serve? I kept my tone level. No, I didn't mention it. I was too busy hearing about Connor's Tesla specs and his new hospital contacts. Connor shifted awkwardly, the keys to his car still in his hand. You're CEO of Soul Canvas, he said. That's you. I saw something about it last year. I just thought, I didn't think it was real. I know I said almost kindly. Most people don't, until they need it. Dad stepped closer, his voice lower, tentative. Rachel, we were wrong. About all of it. About you. I nodded once. Yes, you were. They were silent. I let the stillness stretch a moment longer, then soften just a little. But I didn't build all this to prove you wrong, I said. That was never the goal. Then why didn't you tell us? Mom asked. Why keep all of this a secret? I met her eyes. Because I tried, remember, years ago, when I was teaching art therapy to trauma kids, when I applied for grad school, when I first launched the platform. I told you, and you told me to be realistic, that it wasn't a real career, that I should look for something stable. She looked down at the pavement. I wanted you to be proud of me, I continued, but I stopped needing it when I realized pride for you only came in one shape. My father took a breath, steady but slow. I was too focused on the wrong things, he said quietly. status, titles, appearances. I didn't see you. I nodded. No, you didn't. Connor finally looked up. I always thought you were the soft one, the dreamer. But what you've done, it's insane. Like I'm trying to process it. You built something bigger than I ever imagined. You were busy imagining me as someone small, I said gently. That's why it feels so big now. He smiled faintly, almost embarrassed. Mom stepped forward, and to my surprise took my hands. I'm sorry, Rachel. I truly am. I didn't understand what you were doing. I didn't try to understand. I looked at her not with anger, but with clarity. That's what hurt the most. You didn't have to believe in me, but you never even asked who I was becoming. Behind us, a Forbes photographer gestured that they were ready for the next round of photos. I held up a finger and turned back to my family. I'm hosting dinner tonight, I said. Penthouse, 7 o'clock. It'll just be us. You'll finally get to see everything. We'd like that, Dad said softly. I'll send the jet to pick up Grammy, I added. She's been asking about you. Wait, Mom blinked. Grammy knows. Of course, I said, smiling. She was my first investor. She asked questions. She listened. They were quiet again. From behind me, my assistant appeared with a sleek black tablet. Rachel Elon's office is on the line. He wants to finalize the licensing deal for the digital imaging project. I turned back to my family. I'll call him back later, I said. Right now, I'm having a family moment. Connor let out a short laugh, more disbelief than humor. You're seriously working with Elon Musk. I'm working with a lot of people, I replied, because people asked what I was building and then they helped me build it. I paused, letting that sink in. Dad looked at me again, really looked. You didn't just succeed, he said. You built something that helps people, something real. I know. I could see something shifting in him. Not pride, not yet, but something older, more honest respect. And that meant more than I thought it would. I turned to my assistant. Tell Elon I'll call him after dinner. Yes, Ms. Monroe. As she walked off, I turned back one more time. And Connor. He looked up. You might want to park your Tesla around back tonight. The security team needs the front entrance clear for the documentary crew. He blinked. Documentary PBS, I said. They're doing a feature on modern mental health leadership. I'm one of the subjects. He shook his head slowly, a crooked grin forming. I can't believe my little sister is a billionaire. I smiled. Sometimes the quiet ones build the loudest legacies. That evening, as the sun dipped low over Manhattan, casting everything in soft gold, I stood at the glass wall of my penthouse and looked out over the skyline. The city pulsed quietly beneath me, lights blinking on traffic flowing like rivers' lives unfolding block by block. It was beautiful, not just because it was mine, but because of what it had taken to get here, what I had endured, what I had learned. Behind me, I could hear laughter from the dining table. My family was seated together for the first time in years, Connor still dazed, but more grounded sipping wine. Dad leaning into a conversation with genuine curiosity. Mom softer now, her eyes misty but clear, listening to stories of patients I'd worked with and countries I'd visited. For the first time, they were seeing me not as the version they once imagined, but as the person I had become. Dinner was quiet and rich with things unsaid, but not avoided. After dessert, I brought out a small wrapped box and handed it to my parents. Inside was the framed napkin sketch of the original Soul Canvas logo, the spiral with the heart inside. I said, this is what I started with. On the worst day of my life, when I thought I had nothing else to give, this is what I drew. They looked at it like it was sacred. And now I added it's hanging in over 3,000 clinics around the world. My mother clutched it to her chest. Dad cleared his throat, voice thick. We should have asked. We should have seen you. I know I said, but sometimes you don't know what to ask when you're only looking for one kind of answer. Connor leaned back, smiling gently. You really made this happen. All of it. While we were busy watching each other. I met his gaze. I didn't need you to see me back then. I needed to see myself. And I did. Outside, the first stars had begun to show through the darkening sky. I walked over to the window again, glass cool beneath my fingers. So many nights I had stood here wondering if I would ever be enough for them. If the thing I was building quietly, stubbornly, without applause, would ever matter to the people I loved most. And now I knew it did. Not because it made money, not because it made headlines, but because it made them pause, made them look deeper, and maybe, just maybe, it made them grow. Sometimes the greatest gift success gives you is perspective, not the view from a penthouse, but the view of people finally seeing your worth. Even if it took years, even if it took a graduation, a headline, and a Bugatti to get their attention. And as the night settled in, I raised my glass not just to success or legacy or billions, but to something simpler, to taking the bus and building an empire while no one was watching.